Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Well, hello, and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today, we're very excited to have a special guest with us. Stephen Screen, who's with Better Fundraising Company, is joining us to talk about now what? We've seen a lot of organizations kind of in the limbo mode, wait and see mode, let's figure out what's going on mode, is federal funding going away mode, that sort of same mode that we found ourselves in about 5 years ago this time. And so we've invited Stephen to join us in conversation today to talk about how do we keep our nonprofits moving forward in this crazy time. So Stephen, welcome to the show. We're glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, Kristen, let's do the official introduction.
Let's do it. Stephen Screen is the co-founder of the Better Fundraising Company and has been fundraising for more than 30 years. He's a past winner of the Direct Mail Package of the Year Award and is the inventor of the Ask, Thank, Report, Repeat fundraising rhythm. His goal is to radically increase the fundraising capacity of small to medium-sized nonprofits. He lives outside Seattle, is married with 3 kids, and his superpower is summarizing things.
I agree to that.
I'm so glad Stephen's here. And we're going to tap immediately into the superpower off the top about summarizing things. We're in a moment.
Yeah.
May 2025, to kind of timestamp this for folks whenever they may be listening to that, or whatever they may be living through when they're listening to that. A lot of things going on for our nonprofit friends, and there are a lot of implications that could be significant for them. Could you frame from your vantage point where we are right now in May of 2025 for folks?
Sure. We are in a time of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And that has consequences for fundraising. Now, the really nice thing, if you've been at this fundraising life for a while, is that you've been through times of uncertainty before.
Yeah.
Right. There is nothing particularly new about this. It's manifesting itself in different ways because we're in a different time and we're different people, et cetera. But it's the same thing that happens every once in a while. And there are sort of known ways through this. If you sort of are fortunate enough to have been exposed to them before, or have the values and beliefs about fundraising that cause you to just sort of move through this and not be affected too much by it.
Well, you, at the beginning of the pandemic, were sort of a breath of fresh air for me and my perspective and my work, because you and Jeff Brooks got together really quickly and kind of overlaid history, right? You gave us perspective. Yep. You took a look at other historical moments where things may have really disrupted fundraising and gave us a little path about what to expect. You developed a white paper that had kind of a beautiful graph. I cannot tell you how many times I referred to that graph where I'd be like, oh, we're in the up. Nope, we're in the down. But you have a new white paper now. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the research you've been doing and kind of the findings of that white paper.
Sure. I will say that in the pandemic was easier.
Oh,
because
yes.
Because it was such a sort of a simple shock to the system. And that white paper that we put out had the bump, the slump, and the surge as sort of known periods, responses of nonprofits and donors that result in certain types of things. And that was like a sort of a big natural disaster on steroids for longer than normal. This is a little different. This is a mix of sort of like, it's a combination of fundraising during a recession.
Yeah.
And it's like during a wartime or a pandemic where there is this uncertainty, where you don't know what's going to happen next, where there may be tariffs, there may not be. There may be glaciers in Arizona, there may not be. Nobody knows what's next.
Yeah.
So, and that causes people to behave in certain ways. The trick, you guys, is, I think, properly diagnosing each nonprofit, properly diagnosing where it sits in today's world. And not just going, hey, things are uncertain, we don't know what to do.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, what's interesting to me that I'm finding is during the pandemic, at least initially, there was a little bit more common or universal experience.
Right.
Yes.
And I think depending on
where you sit. Yeah.
With your organization, what your mission work is, how much you're feeling sort of in a direct line of fire and what that looks like. I think there's maybe a wider spectrum of experience than I was familiar with during the pandemic. There was sort of, I don't want to say all for one for all, but there was a little bit more universal nature to what was happening and what people were going through, that this feels a little more varied.
Totally agree. In fact, the genesis behind the white paper that I'm sharing with you guys, and we're gonna publish here in a minute, is an attempt to help people diagnose what's happening for their nonprofit, right, because so many different types of things are happening. There's one group that's drastically affected by fundraising cuts. By government spending cuts.
Yeah,
USAID,
federal funding,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep. There are some groups that aren't affected at all. There are some groups that where the financial uncertainty is really affecting them, and some groups that are, for instance, if you're a beneficiary of all of the rage giving that's happening right now, some groups are up.
Yeah.
So what Jeff and I did was we created it's a series of like 7 or 10 kind of if-then statements. If you're in this particular situation, here's what we do. If you're in that particular situation, here's what we would do. Because again, getting that diagnosis right, what's happening for you and how do you move forward from here, honoring the commitment you've made to your beneficiaries and to your donors and trying to be a beneficial presence. Okay, let's go, but first you have to diagnose it.
Well, so the diagnosis in your first white paper was this like clear, because we were in this universal place, this clear sort of call to action of we're all in the same place of uncertainty. So the biggest thing we need to do is keep talking to our donors, connecting to our donors, meeting with our donors, especially because in light of the fact, I mean, our world was so impacted in the fact that we couldn't gather our donors.
Right.
What are some of those if-then statements now? Where do you find folks having results, or what's the task at hand?
Well, let's see. I find myself wanting to repeat myself in terms of figure out where you're at. And so let me give you for instance, and if then, like, if your organization is openly and publicly opposed to some of the current political policies, you should be all over that issue. You should be publicly talking about it. You should be saying why you disagree, even if you have no funding at risk. If you are out there helping your donors have a place and way to respond and sort of put their money where their values are, you are going to succeed.
Yeah.
There are some cases where if you're not openly or publicly opposed to something, your fundraising should stay apolitical.
Yep.
And you should just be focusing on the beneficiaries, the needs they're experiencing, the incredible things that donors' gifts can make happen through your organization. So that's the type of if-then statement that's in here. And our advice, though short, because there are a bunch of different situations, is sort of based on what we've seen work for organizations in positions like that in the past.
Well, and I think what's interesting about that too is I do think these inflection points actually are an opportunity for organizations to navigate those conversations.
Yeah,
I don't
find
know
clarity.
I don't know that all of them do. I think there's a lot of organizations who want or who have stakeholders in their midst that want them to stay non-political and out of the fray, and that these moments actually have them really have to do that work to figure out what is our identity as an organization, what are we committed to, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Yep.
Either way, but I think these present moments to do some of that work. I'm wondering, I think all of it sounds like it's just wreaking havoc everywhere. What can folks be doing right now to stabilize and sustain their organizations and fundraising efforts globally? Just sort of as a...
Yeah. Well, let's see. Again, depending a little bit on the context.
Yeah.
In general, when the world gets noisy, nonprofits have to work harder for donor attention.
Yep.
Yeah, very true.
All the way from the top to the bottom. From the I was talking to a friend the other day from a grant making organization, and he said they normally get like 250 applications, and this year they were already up to 1,500.
Wow, there's some perspective.
Okay, so now I'm in competition. So I'm a grant writer or whatever. I'm in competition with more.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sending out email, direct response fundraising email, I know that inboxes are flooded with all sorts of other stuff too. So in this time, on behalf of the beneficiaries and organization, generally speaking, we need to kind of amp up our volume, both in terms of the number of communication and how we're getting people's attention, reminding them that what we're working on is really important.
Yep.
And
Mm-hmm.
both to the people or cause that's going to be helped, and to the donor who is receiving the thing, who might be distracted. So it's this thing that many nonprofit folks don't like to do, because we would all love for people to see us for how we're living our values and the importance of our work and give us money. And in this case, we have to fight for attention more than we normally do.
Yeah.
So how do folks get heard in that environment? I feel like so often I've heard you talk about the importance of increased communication. Like, where do you think folks should be landing right now? How should they be talking to donors?
The simplest answer is sort of more everywhere. If you have a major giving program and you have portfolios, I would be trying to check in with donors, instead of 3 times every 3 months, 4 times every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
If I normally send out 25 fundraising emails a year, I might be trying to bump to 35.
Yeah.
It's cognitive. Behavioral science says that the more often we are in front of our donors, the more important our donors believe our work is.
Yeah.
And so if we disappear now, the message that actually sends is that our work is less important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we don't want to do that.
Well, and I think too, sometimes organizations do that evaluation without their donors, right? Like sometimes they look at the noise or they look at the crisis that's happening around them and go, I don't know that our mission's super important at this moment. And it's like, I don't know that that's your choice to make. If your donors feel it's important, it's clearly important to your beneficiaries, continuing to talk to them and let them know that you're continuing to act. That's what's important.
I think I often am looking to the organizations I support to find out, like, how are you responding right now? What are you doing? We've been talking a lot, Stephen, about the importance of gathering people more because, neurologically, we're hardwired to be in community together, to be in story together, to be telling stories to each other. That idea of bring people in for a tour, invite your donors to come and stop by, take them, drop them a little coffee or say hello, just being together more often, connecting, feeling a sense of belonging. I think that when you slip into wait and see mode, like you said, you become obsolete. You become less important, even if
something will fill the space.
Right. Exactly. Even if it's not intentional, I think that is what happens as a sort of bystander.
Yep. Well, I think that's what happens when organizations make these decisions on behalf of their donors. They say, well, listen, it's insensitive to ask right now, or, our cause isn't that important. And and often they'll say, and we think we're going to raise a little less money right now too. So let's not do the work and sort of keep our powder dry. And all of those decisions result in raising less money and being less relevant because we're not in front of our donors, and that brain space gets filled up with something else.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't think of a single mission. I literally cannot think of a single organization or mission that could say that they're less important with the current environment. Just knowing that a lot of the federal funding and a lot of the research out there, a lot of the education out there, a lot of the tools and community networks are all being impacted. I cannot imagine an organization not being even more important.
Yeah.
Well, I also think of human hesitation being manifest in those moments, right? Like it's happening to us personally, and it's manifesting in our professional space. And so I do think sometimes those correlate. I'm wondering, you're one of the best out there in direct mail, period, the end.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned
one of the best, the best.
Yes, the best. I have not always been a fan of direct mail, and you have taught me how to love parts of it and to see the science and the beauty in it. And I am wondering how the reality of this moment, does it impact how fundraisers should approach their direct mail? Does it impact how they should be, the language they should be using in their direct mail right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let's see. I'm going to sort of start one idea maybe up.
Great. Great.
So that's sort of self-complimentary, and that's not how I mean it. But there's this foundational need for nonprofits if they want to scale past about 250 donors, because we can only have so many relationships with so many people. And so if you want to scale, you have to have some tools that allow you to remain in relationship with folks, even if you can't be meeting with them.
Yep.
It's really important to remember that direct mail and email and social are all tools to help us do that, to help us stay in contact with, in front of, and in relationship with our donors, who are more than the ones that we're meeting. Okay, great. So it's just a tool. Direct mail is not this sort of magic legacy pipeline to money, right? It's, though for people who have developed over time, it is. But it's one of several tools. Okay, so in that tool right now, how do you talk to people? So let's first start with those people. Those people are busier than they've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
They are and many of them are in an economically uncertain time.
Mm-hmm.
And their attention is being pulled in a bunch of different ways. Okay, so if we knew that was the group, what would we do? Well, we would probably show up a little bit more often to help get their attention. We would probably simplify our messages to make it not hard to get into whatever world and thought place we'd like them to be. And we would probably work really hard in those messages of earning their attention. So that's how I would think about if I'm helping an organization sort of do differently in direct mail or any of the other channels right now, is let's figure out what we need to do message wise and staffing and resources wise to show up a little bit more often, be a little bit simpler, and focus on the world that the donor is in right now. And reflect, say things to her like, hey, I'm so mad at what's going on right now. I bet you are too. If you'd like a way to help, here's what to do. Or right now, there's a lot of attention on this, that, and the other thing. But what I'm thinking about are the penguins. I bet you think about them too. Let me tell you why they're important right now. Okay, so we've done this sort of contextualizing where we've brought it back to how this is relevant to the donor's life. I mean, that's generally the strategy sort of always, and even now more than ever. Right?
Well, to me, it's that real need in crisis to reach across space, to close gaps of space. And when you're reminding donors that their personal mission has a place it can be in alignment with, and where they can make impact when they're looking at a day that they're like, I have no idea what's up. I feel like I'm spinning wheels. That becomes this like really lovely tactical way that they're like, at least I did that.
Yeah. I went to an event, a fundraising event on Saturday night with my wife. That event raised more money than it ever had in the 20-something year history of the event, which says something, right? There's money out there. And this is a educational institution for neurodiverse kids, and there's sort of nothing political about it. No funding is at risk. It's humming along. But they did this fantastic job of weaving their story into today's and all of our story to give me another reason why my gift to them was meaningful. Right? They did this thing where it's like, listen, our world, because of a lot of stuff that's going on, is more divisive than ever. We have people on both sides of the spectrum here, but you know what the common ground we all agree on is that we believe in inclusive education for neurodiverse kids. Okay, well, so we just took this whole messy world, we established some common ground in what we all value, and then we pushed on it and raised more money than ever.
Well, I think that's the thing that I'm craving desperately is the like authenticity of communication, right? To say, I'm mad, or this is irritating and in our way, or this is misinformation and we need to get in front of it. But then get back to our mission and the work that we're still doing and the impact that it's having. I've had so many organizations send the house is on fire email, you know, like it's all, this is all a crisis, without giving me any information about what's the solution, what can I do, what is the need, how are we responding, what is the action that can be taken. And I appreciate that simply closing the gap and finding the common ground, because it really quickly can bring me back to, okay, tune out all the noise and gaslighting for a second and just look at what is really important and our mission and how we're going to impact it.
Yep, that's right. And the house is on fire tactic works well, but ultimately gets a little hollow if they don't do the things that you were just talking about, which is bring it back to the cause, the beneficiaries, what's the solution, what's going to look like on the other end. You got to do that too. But kudos to those organizations for having the sort of courage and vulnerability to say, hey, the house is kind of on fire right now. That's good. Some nonprofits won't say that. And there's always that sort of higher calling to put it in context that's meaningful both to the organization and the donor.
It's interesting. I hear organizations so often say, we don't want to bombard our donors. We don't want to over communicate, overwhelm our donors. And I think you've been a big proponent of more is better. Can you just give us some statistics or numbers about how often folks should be doing a direct mail outreach versus email communications? What do those numbers look like? And if you're talking about them going up a little bit, I have a feeling people are starting lower than would be advised.
Yeah. So let's see. In general, my answer to that, how much more could we mail? The general answer is at least twice more than you are right now. That goes for almost every that goes for 97% of the nonprofits in the country. And the email is the same. If you don't have sort of 12 strong e-appeals a year, you're walking by a lot of revenue, because not everybody is able to give or even read on your schedule of sending things out. The context for that is two things very quickly. Number one, the first part of my career was spent working for big national organizations, and those organizations are communicating to donors with asks and thanks and reports at least every month. They know that not all giving happens on our schedule, and so they want to be in front of their donors often, both to build mind share and pick up revenue when Aunt Ruth gives you a donation or you get a bonus at work or something happens. Great, fine. And then the super quick data-driven story is I was part of a test where, for a very large national organization, who was asking these same questions. How many pieces of mail can I send out? How often can I talk to my donors? How much is too much? This organization was sending out, I believe, 8 printed appeal letters and 4 printed newsletters per year. So they were at 12 pieces per year. It's 2004, the rise of the internet. We were worried that the internet was taking all of our attention, all of our donors' attention away. So we took a group of this organization's donors, and we developed a new stream of communications for them. And we kept adding pieces to the communication. we were not measuring anybody's feelings or preconceived notions about this. We were only measuring sort of the things about donor behavior that you can really measure. In this case, we were measuring donor retention rate.
Okay.
So what percentage of these folks are coming back the following year? And net revenue. Are we raising more money? Not gross revenue, but net revenue. And so we've got this group of donors, and we started adding pieces of communication. And every piece we add caused these donors to be more likely to stick around the following year and caused more money, net revenue, to be available for program for this organization. Which is to the astonishment of everybody. I shouldn't say everybody, to a handful of people at the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We didn't see negative impact on this as a whole. Of course, we had an unsubscriber or two, right?
Sure.
We didn't see negative impacts until we got to 24 direct mail appeals a year, plus 12 printed newsletters a year.
Wow.
For a total of 36.
So triple.
Yeah.
Triple.
That's amazing.
And that type of, and so that's when we started to see actual sort of measurable, non-feeling based reductions in performance and effectiveness of the fundraising. And so being exposed to tests like that and being exposed to lots of organizations that are in touch with their donors, I mean, I just talked to another organization last week. They send out, I think it was 62 fundraising e-appeals a year.
Wow.
62. Tells you that for small nonprofits, generally speaking, we are under communicating with our donors. And that there is more money there and more relevance there. And it is a gift to show up in the lives of the people who care about what we all care about more often.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think that that's our big opportunity. And I think it always has been, not just because of the environment that we're in right now. I think the opportunity to be in community more, in conversation more, connecting to donors more. What do you think, Stephen, prevents people? Like, what's the obstacle that prevents people from really tapping into their donor base more?
Oh, man. How long do we have?
Top three. Top three obstacles.
Top three. Okay, good. Thank you. Good boundaries. In general, there's real fears around asking for money, right? It makes us feel vulnerable. No, people don't like being in that position. We accidentally make it about ourselves, the organization, instead of the cause or beneficiaries. So there are all these fears around fundraising to begin with. And so asking someone to do more is fear-inducing.
Yeah.
Yep.
You also then will have people at the organization who are going to be very vocal. Oh, well, I never give the organizations that ask me more than twice a year. And so you're going to have internal voices that are saying, blah, blah, blah. And then there's this whole sort of myth of donor fatigue that is like the perfect myth to hold small nonprofits back.
Yep.
And it's super unfortunate. And then there's also very real things so you're at a small nonprofit and you're wearing all the hats, you're a one-person shop, and you don't have time to do a fourth direct mail appeal.
Yeah.
So that's real too. But it's mostly the fear-based stuff that holds people back.
Yeah. When the reality is that if I, the donor, am hearing from you, Stephen, the fundraiser, if I am counting the number of times that you connect with me or send me things, I'm not getting lost in the stories you're telling me. I'm not getting emotionally compelled to tap into your mission. So for me, I think when people come at it with, well, we can't talk to donors 4 times a year, they do this and that and the other. It's like the frame is, well, what stories are we telling?
Yeah.
If they're counting.
Yeah. Well, and then there's this sort of weird thing where the nonprofit experiences more of its mail and email than donors do.
Yes.
Because the nonprofit, right? You open every email you get from your nonprofit, you open every piece of direct mail. But we know that email open rates, if you're doing great, are 30%.
Yeah.
Right.
So we emailed all our donors yesterday, may be true, but only 30% of them got the message.
Right.
Yep.
And so if you say, well, I communicated with my donors 10 times last year, most of them maybe saw 5.
Yeah.
Right.
If that, maybe.
If that.
Yeah. That's
Right.
that's a great
so,
frame.
Yep. And so then if you can kind of increase the volume so you're more present more often, that says our work is more important.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can increase the relevancy of your communications to be sort of about what the donor cares about at this time, more so than teaching her about our organization and how we do our work.
Yeah.
And that gets into messaging and segmentation. Then all of a sudden you have this sort of stream of relevant communications.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we're talking.
Yep.
I think we find the same to be true in events too. It's, there's a limitation, I think, on most organizations about how much staff capacity they have. And events are like the most labor intensive way to gather people. And so we frequently tell people fewer, it can be better when you're producing your big event, because otherwise you kind of are on this hamster wheel of just like checking the boxes and you're not actually building relationships and really thinking intentionally about your strategy. And yet, if you take away the big, grandiose gatherings and you just look at the simple, like getting people together as informally as possible, just around your mission. We had an organization that put together an entire dinner series, and different board members and supporters each hosted a dinner. And that rhythm of 2 dinners a week was happening, and it was creating social media buzz. It was creating kind of that FOMO of, well, I didn't go to one, so now I'm interested in going to one. Right. And it created this sort of compounding impact where the more that they gathered, the more interest, the more often, the more repetition, the more, like 2, 3, 4 times the donations. So I think that there is value in thinking about those moments that we connect and gather and share stories, all being another opportunity for people to feel connected to mission and feel a sense of belonging.
Absolutely. Totally agree. And we know that nobody gets sort of the whole picture of an organization's mission and mission and vision and programs at one shot, right? It's multiple touches over time. And then we also know that the more we do things, we get better at them. By those twice weekly dinners, by the 8th week, those folks were really good at knowing exactly what needed to take place for them to be great.
Yeah.
And so the dinners are better. And then you get that whole flywheel thing of, the 8th week of dinners is better. The second big gala of the year is better. The 8th appeal is better.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Well, let's take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this particular moment in time that we're sitting in. So we'll be right back with Stephen Screen.
Great.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the fundraising elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your program and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at elevatenonprofit.com. You can also find the link in the show notes.
Welcome back. We're here with Stephen Screen. The Stephen Screen.
The Stephen Screen.
I am so glad that Stephen is here. You have said that when there's a shock to a nonprofit organization, core beliefs are shown. And that really resonated with me. I think that's really fundamental. Can you explain that idea for folks and give us some examples, maybe, so that folks can start to get their brain around what they're doing?
Sure. I think that organizations develop egos and senses of self over time. And they have belief systems that are, right, we're talking about fundraising here, but we're also talking about events and relationship and money and all those things. And that, so an organization ends up having a sort of a set of behaviors that it's an amalgamation of everybody there. Oftentimes it's a sort of very strong executive director or founder. And that when there are shocks to the system, some of the layers of things get sort of pushed to the side, and you see the core beliefs. And so, for instance, I think one of the reasons that in times of uncertainty, so many nonprofits do less fundraising or less direct fundraising is because they're already afraid of fundraising. They've kind of been doing it because it's what you do here, but they don't really like it. So you'll hear people say things like, "Oh, well, in a time like this, we can't ask for money."
Yeah.
Right. I think we referenced that earlier.
Core value exposed.
Yeah. Right. But on the other side, you will also hear, and I think this comes very often from founders. We love working with founders. We call them founders on fire because they're often just sort of willing to run through walls, and they have different sets of core beliefs. And their response to something like this is, the people we're helping or whatever it is we're working on is more important than ever. This is going to get lost. It's time to press the turbo button. Here we go, everybody. Okay, right. And again, there are these sort of beliefs that come through that are visible in our actions under stress.
Yep.
Well, you've mentioned now twice fear of fundraising. I'm curious, what do you think that is? Like, why do you think the fundraising sector fears fundraising? And what do we do about it? Like, how do we redirect, shift, coach, empower folks to fear less?
Man, let's see. I guess a couple, if I was, got to be in charge for a day, which is highly unlikely. With the massive increase in size of our sector, we have so many more people working in it. And in general, we don't have great training about it.
Right.
So the percentage of people in our sector now versus say 20 or 50 years ago, the percentage of people that are trained is smaller than it was years ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So that means something. And then I just don't think that there's a great foundational understanding of the exchange of value between donors and organizations in the fundraising interaction. Too often, people feel like we are, right? How many people have you guys talked to where you say, I want to tell this great story at an event that you guys are helping with, and someone will say, well, that's emotional manipulation. Or we're wringing people's arms. When 100% of it is true.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And somehow we end up with this like donors or old ladies that we have to help across the street when we have all these sort of emotionally mature, compassionate people who can handle truth and would love to help. But until you see that every piece of fundraising is a chance for the donor to put her money where her values are, to remake the world in a place that's aligned with her values in a way that she loves doing, you don't like doing it.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating space to sit in too with organizations where the fear starts to creep in. And I think people have different fears, right? Like individuals maybe have a different relationship to money, or they haven't dealt with their own money story. But the storytelling piece, the like telling our truth, speaking to the facts, speaking to what's really happening, can create such a sense of actually like relief and connection that it's not just sort of a blanket of, well, there's a need, so to give. Instead, it's, this is really what's happening. These are the specifics, and here's the solution. I feel a sense of, oh, thank God someone's doing this work. Thank goodness there's a solution. That those stories, I think, help me feel like I can be empowered as a donor, versus feeling kind of like at arm's length with, there's a crisis, here's the crisis, and not knowing like, where do we go from here? And so I think that the the storytelling piece that we often get pushback on of, well, we don't want to share those stories. To your point, they're 100% true. They're a part of the work that we're doing. I think there's ethical ways to be sharing those stories, and we have to be thoughtful about doing it ethically. But I think that for us, oftentimes the fear starts to abate when people start to see that what they're doing is working, that people are responding positively, that donors are starting to say, "Ooh, yes, I want to jump on that train."
Yeah.
I'm wondering too if you see people, I don't know if the word's precious, but sometimes being a little too precious about the stories they're telling and that getting in the way of them being able to tell them. I'm thinking about an increased cadence of donor communication, and that coupled with that fear of fundraising, those feel like those are forces in diametric opposition. And that I have a wonder if folks actually were like, you know what? Only 30% of the people are going to read this one. I might as well just get it out there and create some reps. And it's not that you're selling yourself short, but it's that it could be 96% of the way there, 89% of the way there. Get it out the door. You know, like just what if you could have some successful reps fundraising and turn that precious meter down on having everything so buttoned up and correct, and you just sit on it until it's no longer relevant. That I have a wonder about that circle chasing its own tail sometimes, and that I don't want to say be mediocre.
Steven's
I don't want to say
agreeing.
Be mediocre, but like be great and then go be great again.
Yeah.
And is there anything in that?
Take that leap.
There's so much in that. There's this weird, it's sort of Zen-like, but you can't send out a whole lot more fundraising until you send out a lot more fundraising.
Yeah,
So Seth Godin has a book called The Practice. And it's just about sort of showing up and shipping the work and seeing what happens and get better every time. And it's not about fundraising, and it's absolutely about the act of showing up in our donors' lives more often.
Yeah.
And yes, we have to be a little bit less precious about it. And admittedly, it's really hard to not be precious when you send out 2 e-appeals and 2 direct mail letters a year.
Yeah,
Everything
it's
seems
true.
so important.
Yeah.
Because all your eggs are in those baskets, at least in terms of that segment of your revenue. But we could talk for hours about all of the mistakes that I have been a part of on teams where things happen and places where I have screwed up that brought in lots and lots of money. And there's the famous one where we asked donors to, we sent them a paper placemat along with a Thanksgiving appeal. And we asked them to sign the placemat and send it back. And we would put it and this organization would put the placemat in front of someone having a Thanksgiving meal. In very large type, it instead of saying, please return your placemat, it said, please return your placenta.
Oh, no.
To a lot of, tens of thousands of donors. And it did great.
Because it got people's attention.
Right, it got people's attention, and stuff like that happens. And you send, anyway,
Perfection's overrated.
It's this sort of it's this weird act of trust and generosity where you show up for your donors more often and trust that they care about this thing that you're working on. And that if you're there enough, you'll get better and they'll affirm you. But the nonprofit does have to take that first step.
Yeah. I want to know about tools and systems. I feel like right now, especially living through this like technology evolution and AI, there's a tool for everything. I think that sometimes it's a repeat of something else that exists out there. Sometimes it's for the better, sometimes it's not. When I was going to dive into a little bit about the quality of those tools, I'm wondering first, are there any tools or systems that you're finding fundraisers should be using more often or leaning into more often?
Well, let's see. The ability to do print on demand stuff is really helpful. But we are sort of old school in terms of tech, and I guess I mean by that it's a focus on direct mail and email.
Yep.
And then it's the next part of the stack that we're optimizing is email deliverability and landing page conversion rates.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then customized landing pages with coding and motivation codes that are going all the way through. Lots of different tech stack ways to achieve that objective, but so that you're tracking everything and you know how the 5th email performed versus the 7th versus the 1st, and how this page versus that page. That's where we're focused, because most organizations' funnels, if you think about it that way, again, for the sort of direct response communications, where we're trying to build a relationship through these, even though we're not meeting with them, they're just leaky as heck.
Yeah.
True.
It's true.
And we already, as a rule, we try to optimize those, because you can double how much an e-appeal raises if your landing page is better and doesn't have attention leaks and all of that stuff. So that's where we find the highest point of leverage right now.
Okay.
Have you seen anyone doing cart abandonment programs or tracking? Is that working for folks?
It works like crazy.
Yeah. I feel like it's something, because we don't think of like shopping for our nonprofit, but like getting people to complete a transaction when they're, in the middle of it, and then figure out, oh my God, my credit card is expired. I have to go get my other credit card. And then they never come back to it.
And then the dog went nuts at the squirrel across the street. And then, life continues.
Well, and then you run into the same fears that we're talking about, where people rationalize, well, I don't want to do that because that would be insensitive. I don't want to be one of those pushy nonprofits, which is like, but they'll do it to get me to buy a pair of pants.
Right.
But I won't do it to feed someone or rescue something or provide access to something. It's like, no. What we're doing, we should be on the forefront.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those pair of pants will follow me around the internet 15 times before I actually buy them.
Well, and I just feel like commit to your mission.
Yeah, believe in it. Trust that putting it out there.
When you do, I envy that, right? I go, okay.
Yeah,
I'm in.
Right?
I'm in. Yeah.
Right.
I love that.
Right. It's that really leaning in and active, sort of generously on behalf of your beneficiaries, putting opportunities out there to give, sharing credit when people do for the stories that they help make possible. It's the asking and it's the reporting, and all of this stuff creates a stew that is really good at keeping donors around for longer, at identifying mid and major donors, helping people get to the event where you guys are going to take great care of them, and then they're going to come next year and invite their friends because it was professionally done. All of that stuff. It really is a flywheel, to use that analogy.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Well, we're going to take one last break, and when we come back, we're going to jump in the fundraising elevator. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.
Welcome back. We are here with Stephen Screen. We are getting in the fundraising elevator. Stephen, the fundraising elevator, where we're all headed up. What is that bit of wisdom or tip you'd share for nonprofits right now to keep them headed up?
Trust your donors. Mm-hmm. They're adults. They can handle hearing from you a little bit more often or a little bit more honestly about what's going on. If you do that, the organizations that do that just tend to raise more money.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, I think
show up a little bit more often.
I love that.
I think that removing that layer of fear and just diving into communicating and sharing your story is something we have seen proven true through other times of crisis. Thank you for your white paper work. I think it's invaluable to have that sort of experience to be able to lean on and be able to share to our boards and to our nonprofit folks about where we're headed and where we're at and get some perspective. So we will have a link to that white paper in the show notes so folks can find it. I encourage you to share it with your board of directors as well. One of my favorite times of the year is the annual Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. You are deeply involved in the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. And one of the things that you do at that conference that I think people love so much is really helping to dissect and coach folks through direct mail and storytelling. But storytelling is such a big part of mission-based work. So thank you for being such a big part of the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. I look forward to seeing you in November. I hope our listeners will join us. It's in San Diego this year. How else can folks see you and get a hold of you?
They can download the white paper. That's a great first place to start. Subscribe to our blog, which you can do, I think, from the confirmation page after you download the white paper, or anywhere on the betterfundraising.com website. We publish twice a week and try to put out a mix of super tactical stuff, 5 things to do with the first sentence of your next e-appeal, and how to find common ground with your donors. It's like so much of fundraising, it's a yes and, it's the tactics and the thinking that result in more relationship and then more money and more impact.
Well, we share some common clients, and I think Better Fundraising Company is a perfect name for what you do because you have helped so many of our common shared organizations really improve and increase their fundraising. I hope folks dig into your website, learn from the Stephen Screen, the work of the Better Fundraising Company, join us at the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference, and bravely get out there and share your story and connect to your donors. Thank you for joining us today, Stephen.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to seeing you at the Storytelling Conference.
Great. See you there.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Friends, before we leave you, we want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please follow, subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Event planners are discovering Avenue, the Pacific Northwest's new AV-forward event venue, intentionally designed with nonprofit fundraising events in mind. From the 93-foot video production wall to the highest quality sound and lighting, premier AV features are included in every venue rental. You'll find the space and audiovisual enhancements to create your unique and memorable event. Visit avenueportland.com to schedule your personal tour.